All right, and we are live. Hello, thank you for joining. I know it's a slightly earlier time today. There are so many things to talk about that I figured we would start a little earlier. Maybe we'll get done a little earlier. It's been a while. It's been a long week. Um, as usual, if you want to support this channel, go to patreon.com/Hemant. That helps a ton. Or even better, go subscribe to friendlyatheist.com. That's my newsletter. That's where you get all the good stuff. We have Jess, who is moderating in the comments. You could say hi to Jess. You could leave your comments, questions, thoughts about stories as we go through them. She'll make sure I see them in between stories. And I will go ahead and get started here. I wanted to start by talking about this sermon that just went crazy viral earlier this week. And I will tell you, when I saw a trusted account post a clip of this sermon, my first thought listening to it was, yes, I want to run through a wall for this pastor because he's saying so many good things. And um, this pastor, using his like Baptist cadence and using all the trappings of a conservative church, said something, and I'm quoting here: there has never been a Christian nation and never will be. And I'm going to let you listen to the clip first, and then I will get into where I'm going with this story. But let me play this for you. Uh, Actually, let me show you this. This is the tweet I saw at first. Pastor Lauren Livingston of Central Church in North Carolina. And you could see what he says right there. I'll play the clip for you. I just want you to look at this. As of right now, 2 million views, and it's been shared 20,000 times, liked 69,000 times. This thing went viral beyond, I'm assuming, even that pastor's wildest dreams. Let me play for you the exact clip, then we'll talk about it.
There has never been a Christian nation. You don't live in one now. We had godly people get on boats and come over here so they could worship. Godly people. We've had the greatest Bible preachers in the 15, 16, 1700s. Godly people. Some of the people that constructed this country, godly people. But it has never been a Christian nation and never will be. A Christian nation would never have killed and displaced 20 million Native Americans who are still left out and living in poverty. A Christian nation would never have thought that owning slaves was pleasing to God, or that it lined up with Scripture in any way, shape, or size. And we not only practiced it, but we were so obsessed with it that we went to war about it. We had a civil war. And in that civil war, 500,000 Americans died. That's more than Americans that died in World War II or any other war we've ever had. Our own civil war. We killed 500,000 of our own people so people could have the right to own other people as property.
I mean, wow. Those are powerful words, and he's a really good communicator of those words. I mean, he is saying we don't live in a Christian nation because a nation that was truly Christian would never do a lot of the horrible things America has done. And in fact, in other parts of that exact same sermon, he also said it was ridiculous that we spend billions of dollars building sports stadiums, quote, while the poor, the hungry, the jobless sit in the shadow of those arenas in rat-infested low-income housing. And then later, he condemned Donald Trump for signing an executive order not that long ago, telling people to Sabbath. And the reason he is because he said no government official ought to have his hands in anybody's faith. And then he went after Big Pharma. He called it Big Pharma for price gouging. And he also said a Christian nation would weep and do something about our military veterans sleeping on the streets. So, oh my goodness, who is this man and is he the hero we've been waiting for? The reason this clip got shared as often as it did is because I think a lot of people have been clamoring to hear what appears to be a conservative Christian, or at least the trappings of a conservative Christian church, say what's so obvious. Because he sounds like a democratic socialist, right? And the thing about democratic socialism is if you take away the label, the stuff they're pushing for is widely popular with everybody. So that's why this thing got shared. And my first thought was, yes, I'm going to share this as well. I did. I admit that. And then my next thought is, how come I never heard of this speech, this sermon, until now? Is this a recent sermon? And now I went digging and I found the sermon. It was actually delivered on June 28th. So for about a week after he delivered this sermon, no one was sharing it. But that's the nature of viral stuff. Sometimes no one notices something until later, then it goes viral. But then I'm like, wait a minute, I've covered Christians before. I've covered pastors before. Let's watch the actual full sermon and see more of what this guy is saying. Because is he always like this? Has he given entire sermons on any aspects of this? I want to know how cool this guy is. And so I started watching the full sermon. He actually delivered two versions of the same sermon on June 28th because big church, they do the same thing a few times. And then I realized, in context, this guy is not the hero we've been waiting for. Because when he says we don't live in a Christian nation, and then he says, because look at all the shit we do, it's not that he just wants us to be better people. To him, he wishes we were in a Christian nation, and he wishes we were doing the things that align with his vision of Christianity, which again might be okay if the stuff he wanted was universal, like slavery bad. But that's not where he went with it. In fact, if you listen to different parts of the sermon, the takeaway is very different. For example, he talked about how we should not have religion in government, right? That's why he was mad at Donald Trump for an executive order to celebrate the Sabbath. But not in the sense that he doesn't like when Christianity is used as an excuse to push certain policies. No, his argument was that we need religion out of government because all of these other people are bringing religion into the government. And you're like, wait a minute, do they? And his sermon went on to say, those gay people in the government, that's their religion. People who are Muslim in the government, they're bringing their religion into it. Because to him, if you talk about something you're deeply passionate about, or in the case of the few Muslim members of Congress, you have to talk about it because you have to play defense against what Republicans are trying to do when they are bigots about your faith. This guy is just saying, well, that's a religion and that's bad. The only thing he wants you to think about is God. And if you care about anything else, that's your religion and it's a bad thing. Let me play you a clip you did not see go viral, and this is about the religion section.
Oh, brothers and sisters, we have religion in our government. I'm talking about our government. We have Judaism in the Senate and Congress. You know who they are. We have Islam in the government. You know the Muslims that make the noise. We have atheism in our leadership. That's a religion. We don't believe there's a God. Then that makes you your own God. That's a religion. We have the LGBTQ religion in Congress and the Senate and in other places of leadership. It's there. See, that's your religion. Whatever you embrace and pour your energy into and think about and work for becomes your religion. They're there.
That's a disturbing section for many reasons. Just to run through it, we have Judaism in the government, and he says, you know who they are? Yikes. That sounds anti-Semitic. We have Islam in the government. No, not Sharia law. We have a handful of Muslims who might wear a hijab. Some of them don't. But he said the Muslims that make the noise. I've never heard Ilhan Omar say, hey, I'm Muslim, therefore we should pass this law that none of you are going to like. She's never done that. And so by redefining religion to be anything you talk about that I'm not a fan of, you're basically dismissing the fact that religion, specifically conservative Christianity, is a very real problem in our government. He said, we have atheism in our leadership. As someone who covers atheism and politics, no, we don't. There is one openly atheistic member of Congress, and he's not in Democratic leadership. He said for atheists, oh, we don't believe there's a God. Then that makes you your own God. No, atheists do not think we are our own gods. So, and then what? LGBTQ people. If you care about that, that's your religion. Do you know what Republicans are trying to do to LGBTQ people right now? Do you know what the Supreme Court has done to trans people and what they want to do to same-sex couples? Talking about that issue, bringing it up, that's not a religion. That is bringing up a very concerning political issue. There is one transgender member of Congress. She's not even a trans activist, but she knows that because of the nature of who she is, people are always going to ask her about being trans. But she doesn't really want to talk about it. And yet, according to Pastor Livingston here, because she mentions it ever, because people talk about it when they talk about her, that's now her religion. So we can dismiss everything she says. This is not a pastor defending church-state separation. This is a guy who wants to see his beliefs enacted into law, but he does one of those Christian rhetoric things where you say, oh no, I'm not a Christian at all. I don't like Christians either. I'm a follower of Jesus. As if those are any different from each other. So don't pretend you are not a religious man when you just want your beliefs promoted above everyone else's. But there was one more part that if you were still iffy on this guy, I'll push you off the cliff and show you why he is not the hero you want. He then tried to explain what a truly Christian nation would look like. And we already know what he said. He said if we were in a Christian nation, we wouldn't have done all the slavery and the genocide of Native Americans. But he said more, and this was not in the viral clip. I'm going to show you 2 minutes of this sermon, and you're not going to like it.
No Christian nation would thoughtlessly murder 80 million unborn babies, mostly minorities. Thoughtlessly throw them in a trash can and be done with it. Mostly minorities. I'm pro-choice, people say. Well, you are for the most racist stance in this country. Knowing that abortion affects minorities more than anybody else, and you stand for that? Do you think a Christian nation would be gender confused? A Christian nation would fund and finance the butchering of children's bodies to change their sex because abusive adults were so empty and lost that they would advise young children who don't even understand biology, much less the sexual process, to have their bodies changed? Do you think a Christian nation would praise and promote same-sex union? A woman marrying a woman and a man marrying a man? You notice I said union. I didn't say marriage. The only definition of marriage is one woman and one man. Or any other perverted union.
So there's your hero. Not a great guy. Equating abortion to murder, implying that all abortions occur by throwing babies into trash cans. All of them. That's how it works. They just bring it into the clinic and then you play basketball. I think that's how this guy thinks abortion works. It shows how little he knows about the procedure whatsoever. It's always interesting to hear conservative Christians try to make the argument that their real concern about abortion is the racism of it all. Because it's kind of the only time they ever seem to care about racism, when they can use it to argue that women should have fewer rights, right? When they can ban abortion access, they're like marching with Dr. Martin Luther King. Every other time, they're like, yeah, no, we're cool with it. The idea that we are also butchering kids, trans kids, suggests, again, he has put no real thought into this. One, he's ignoring the very real concerns of trans youth. He also implies that, like, if a kid says, I'm the other gender, that, oh, well, I guess you could just walk into a clinic and we're going to perform surgery on you, which is not how it works. I mean, even if you're trans and you want gender affirming surgery, it's expensive. So this guy, not only does he say that people are butchering kids, when if that happens, if gender affirming surgery happens, I promise you, it's after a lot of thought and a lot of discussion and a lot of buy-in from all the participants involved here who are connected to the child. And it's rare, but also he just pretends adults are pressuring kids to do that. It's the same argument we heard about gay people like decades ago. Like, you become gay because some adult pressured you into it. Like, that is not how it works at all. And this guy also has a problem with same-sex marriage to the point where he won't even say the word marriage. Like, that's just homophobia, pure and simple. And he actually, I don't have a clip of this, but he said later in that same section that no Christian nation would ban the Bible or remove the Bible from anything. When did that happen? What straw man is this? We haven't banned the Bible. You can read the Bible pretty much anywhere. We didn't remove the Bible from anything. You want to go to a library and read the Bible? You can. It's there. It's the books about gay people that you guys are trying to take off the shelves and remove from sight. The point is, this guy does not want church-state separation. He is not some progressive hero. He is the same brand of Christian bigot we have seen before, except he is also a little willing to call out some of the excesses on the right. So all I'm saying is, don't get thrown off by the viral clip. I heard from a lot of people this week after I posted about this who said, oh, shit, I reposted the original thing. I'm going to undo that. Sorry, I didn't share it. And all I would say is, whenever you see a clip of a pastor doing good things, saying good things, it's not that hard to double check if that pastor is like that all the time or if that's an anomaly. And in this case, it's an anomaly. This is not a guy who is like going to pride marches and defending civil rights or anything like that. This guy just knows how to communicate. He knows how to frame what he wants to say so it's not entirely focused on the hate. But don't let him get away with that. So that's the problem with every time I see a viral sermon clip, it's like my initial thought is, and again, I say this to someone who shared this one. It's, well, what else did he say? I want to know what else he preaches because they never let me down. And I think this guy Livingston, he's now benefiting from the fact that most people are never going to listen to the full sermon. It's like you took a selfie and then used a filter and put it on Instagram and everyone assumes you look hot. It's like, okay, but I want to see all the other pictures of you as well. Let me be the judge of that if that's how we're playing this game. So he's not rejecting the idea that America should be governed as a Christian nation. He just wants to govern the way he likes his Christianity. And I'm glad he's against slavery, but his form of Christianity is not good for a lot of people. So don't give this man unearned praise. In this man's ideal world, we would punish victims of sexual assault by not giving them access to abortions. He would ban gay couples from getting married if he could. He would further marginalize trans people. We are not better off in the world he wants to live in. All right, I will stop there with this story. What questions we got here? These godly people, smurfed Native Americans, witches, people of other gender ideologies, owned people, and so on. Oh, and often married within families. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. You're right. Plenty of people motivated by their faith have done very horrible things in our history. And if these people were willing to study history, which a lot of conservative Christians very much don't, kind of for this reason, you would learn how religion is tied into many of the awful chapters in our history. Oh, thanks for that donation. I don't want to agree with him, but the Bible 100% supports slavery. So this is an interesting thing. You can find chapters that talk about slavery and it's not preceded by bad. There's a lot of that in there. But the thing is, you will find biblical justifications for slavery, which were used to defend it in the South. And you'll also find abolitionists citing the Bible as a reason for why we should not have slavery. And the thing about conservative Christians, and they do this in Texas right now, they will cite Christians who were abolitionists as if that was the only way people interpreted the Bible back in the day. It's like there were plenty of slave owners. There were plenty of bad people who used the Bible to defend slavery. There are people who use the Bible to defend segregation today. It's not like in the ancient past. So, yeah, it's the Bible. It's big enough and it's vague enough that you can use it to justify whatever you want, and that's part of the problem. He's just a broken clock that happened to be right about one or two things. I think that's the right assessment there. Yeah, he happened to be right about a couple very big things. And unfortunately, I'm very curious because the Tennessee Holler posted the clip that went viral. And I don't know if they found it or someone sent it to them. I don't know if they heard the full sermon. I don't know if someone sent them that chopped up clip. But I have a feeling they didn't watch the whole thing. And that's a danger anytime you see this stuff. Has he heard of the Thomas Jefferson Bible? That's a good question. I don't know if he has, but the Jefferson Bible was famously a Bible that had all the miracle stuff cut out from it. It was just the good stuff. It's not the supernatural crap. That's the Bible Jefferson used, and you get the feeling a lot of conservative Christians would not like to remind people that one of the biggest founding fathers was not a fan of the Bible they like. Okay, the man is utter trash. There you go. That's where you needed to get to, and you are there. Nice. All right, I'm going to jump to another story here. One moment. All right. Over the weekend, we had the 4th of July in the United States, and, every politician is going to say something about the 4th of July, love America, whatever. Fine, we're used to it. Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, he posted something that actually got people's attention for all the wrong reasons. And I'm going to share it with you here because it's not offensive on the surface. But let's talk about what the problem is here. Happy 250th, America. Actually, I'm sorry. If I say this, I got to do one of these, but now I can't read it. The founding fathers called America God's noble experiment. I believe in all three words to this day. We are one nation under God. We have clung to noble ideas for longer than any other nation. And we are an experiment, always changing, trying to make ourselves better. God bless America. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day celebrating with their friends and family. Okay. No to a lot of this. We'll get back to the God's noble experiment in a second, but we are one nation under God? No, we're not. Why are you, of all people, saying this? That's a Christian nationalist talking point. You should know better. We have clung to noble ideas for longer than any other nation. I don't think that's true at all. I mean, some of our ideas are noble, but like other countries have been around longer than us, and in many cases, they're doing pretty damn well for themselves. And we are an experiment, always changing, trying to make ourselves better. Tell you what, I'll give you that one. But the thing that caught people's attention was that first line about how the founding fathers called America God's noble experiment. Because when did the founding fathers say that? Which founding father said that? Where did the founding father say that? Because as far as myself and pretty much everyone else can tell, the answer is no one ever said that ever. And what makes this so troubling is that Chuck Schumer has been saying that line for years and years and years. In fact, if you search in quotation marks for the phrase God's noble experiment, the only politician in US history who has ever said that phrase is Chuck Schumer. And I want to play for you just an example of what I mean. In 2025, he gave a speech on the Senate floor about America's right to protest, talking about the No Kings rallies, things like that. And a short clip of what he said about why it's so important that we have the right to protest.
Do not be afraid to peacefully protest against Donald Trump's eroding of our democracy, and do not be afraid to show how much you love this beautiful democracy, as the founding fathers called it, God's noble experiment. We have to keep this precious democracy.
Okay, so he said it again. That was 2025. But wait, let me go back to 2018. This is from the Senate Democrats' website. He gave a speech on the House floor about what? About special counsel Mueller. Remember back in the day? And stock buybacks. And if you scroll down, this is what he said on the floor. In the long history of this country, God's noble experiment, as the founding fathers called it, that's never been what the Justice Department has stood for. And there's another speech from 2017 where he's talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and their mandatory arbitration rule. And somehow, even in this speech, if you scroll down enough, I still believe to this day it is what the founding fathers called it when they left Constitution Hall, God's noble experiment. We are one nation under God. God's noble. We're a noble country. I don't know what he glitched at the end there. But like, he said it in 2017. He also said it in 2016 after Trump got elected. And that same year, Chuck Schumer got reelected. He said it in his speech at the time. He said it in 2009 when Sonia Sotomayor was getting confirmed to the Supreme Court. Let me show you this really quick. This is an excerpt from like all the confirmation hearings. Just look at the top of your screen here. 1,408 pages. This is a very long document of everything said during Sotomayor's confirmation hearing. But here's Chuck Schumer's speech. Mr. Chairman, people felt at the founding of America that we were God's noble experiment. Justice Sotomayor's personal story shows that today, more than 200 years later, we are still God's noble experiment. Okay, that was 2009. And by the way, there was another example of him saying it in 2003. I couldn't find anything earlier, but Chuck Schumer has been saying this line for over 2 decades in speech after speech. It's just a part of his stump speech at this point. The only person who seems to believe the founding fathers ever said this was the guy who keeps repeating the fact that they said this, even though that's not a fact. That is a complete work of fiction. Joanne Freeman is a Yale historian, and she responded to this tweet of Chuck Schumer's over Independence Day. This is what she said. In the well over 100,000 documents written by founders, included in the Founders Online database from the National Archives, no one uses the phrase God's noble experiment. No one. So that's a Yale historian for you. Then there's Adam Kuiper, who works for The Bulwark, which is a never Trump sort of ex-Republican group. But this is what he said. For what it's worth, I only find one hit for the phrase in ProQuest, another database, from a 1939 book review written by a Hillsdale professor in the journal Church History. It's a review of some guy's book, The Protestant Crusade. And again, I'm not going to read this, but that's the only time you see the phrase. But even then, this is the book reviewer saying that phrase in his review of another book, not a founding father, not an excerpt from something the founder said. And this is funny, partly because Hillsdale is now a super conservative Christian college, like a feeder system to right-wing politics. But that means the only time anyone can find any use of the phrase God's noble experiment was in 1939 by a random guy writing a book review. So here's where we're at. The Senate Democratic leader has spent more than 2 decades attributing a quotation to the founding fathers that appears to have no historical basis whatsoever. It is not a careless mistake because he has been saying this for years and years and years. It is a myth that Chuck Schumer has helped manufacture through sheer repetition. It is one thing that Donald Trump and him have in common. Trump knows if you repeat a lie often enough, it'll lodge in people's broken brains. And that's the danger here. I know Trump's doing it as part of a strategy. I know Fox News does it as part of a strategy. If they say the lie often enough, people will believe it. But now, because Chuck Schumer is saying it, my fear is that journalists, maybe future politicians, maybe the David Bartons of the world are going to repeat it as if it were authentic because, hey, Chuck Schumer said it. Not exactly a guy who spreads lies for a living. He's just not good at what he does. But the other fear is that this is propping up Christian nationalist rhetoric, because Christian nationalism is the idea that our country was founded with Christianity in mind, right? That there was a divine mission to the beginning of America, that we have a specific religious identity. It's the stuff all of us who care about church-state separation have been fighting against for such a long time because it's not true. And here's Chuck Schumer, who's just saying, like, all those founders, they started our country as God's noble experiment. No, stop it. We have a secular government for a reason. Stop pandering to conservative Christians. Democrats, and especially the Senate Democratic leader, should not be validating that BS worldview by making up religious rhetoric for the founders. If you want to find quotations about how our country was founded with noble intentions, you can find that. If you want to say our country was founded as an experiment, you can find that. You don't need to go searching to combine all that stuff with religion. So Chuck Schumer needs to apologize, and he needs to stop saying it. I reached out to his staff. I haven't heard back from them. Plenty of groups have called out Chuck Schumer publicly for perpetuating this lie. They haven't heard back either. I appreciate that American Atheists put out this statement. Why is Chuck Schumer fabricating Christian nationalist style quotes? But I want to show you this quotation from their president, Nick Fish. It's disturbing to see any American politician fabricate, apparently from whole cloth, a quotation that is indistinguishable from the junk history being pushed by David Barton and the rest of the white Christian nationalist movement. It's particularly galling in the wake of Christian nationalist hijacking of our nation's 250th anniversary and their attempts to redefine America in stark exclusionary terms. That Chuck Schumer has seemingly been repeating this sentiment for more than 20 years doesn't make it true. The truth matters. And the truth is that the U.S. is an experiment in secular self-government, not theocratic rule, a nation that promises religious pluralism, not religious tests of any kind. American Atheists launched a petition asking people to sign it, telling Schumer to stop it. They sent his office a letter. Schumer has not responded yet, but just putting it out there. Incidentally, if you are on YouTube, you can actually find a clip from John Oliver's last week tonight, where they talked about a family called the Baileys. You can go find it right now. The Baileys, last week tonight. Go look it up. But they did a segment where they said Chuck Schumer has, for many, many years now, he says that whenever I'm paraphrasing here, whenever he makes a decision, whenever he votes, he thinks about a family called the Baileys, husband and wife. And he always thinks about they're a middle-class family with complicated politics. And he always wants to know, like, what are they thinking about this? Is it good for them? The Baileys are a stand-in for what a quintessential American family is like. And the joke that John Oliver keeps pointing out over and over is that this family, if you ask him, who did the Baileys vote for? He's like, oh, they voted for uh, Trump in 2016. But then one of them voted for Joe Biden in 2020, but then went back to Trump in 2024. Like, he has a whole backstory for this family that's super specific. And of course, as you find out, these people don't exist. Not a real couple. But Chuck Schumer seems to have this habit of lying to benefit a preferred narrative. And this is just what he goes off of. He has a habit of making things up to suit the thing he wants to say. Like, that's a Republican tactic. Why are you lying? Why can't you actually cite normal people? And by the way, the thing about him lying about this stuff is that the Baileys always seem to serve Republican talking points, because whatever the Republicans are doing appeals to the Baileys. So Democrats also need to be like anti-immigrant. And when he says we're God's noble experiment, you're perpetuating right-wing rhetoric about how we're a Christian nation. So even if this has some political benefit in Chuck Schumer's mind, it's strategically stupid. So Schumer needs to stop it. And I hope he gets primaried in 2028 if he's not retiring. And by the way, if Democrats somehow take back the Senate, he should not be majority leader. We can find better communicators than him. Okay, I will stop there. What questions we got with this story? Schumer is basically a Reagan Republican, right? Which the Republicans hate at this point, but also Democrats hate at this point. And you have to wonder, who is he pandering to? There's this whole brand of establishment centrist Democrats that are playing to a base that does not exist except in their own minds. And I don't understand the strategy behind it. We are seeing it in Michigan right now, where you have Abdul al-Sayed, who is running as a progressive Senate candidate, and you have Haley Stevens, who's running a campaign that I, for the life of me, do not understand, because she's not a good communicator. She excites nobody. She holds political positions that energize nobody in the Democratic Party. And that's the person Chuck Schumer is backing. I don't get it at all. The founding fathers were mostly deists. Jefferson and Adams were specifically for a complete separation of church and state, not only amending the Constitution, but also the Treaty of Tripoli. Yes to all of that. I mean, yes, a handful of deists, and we talked about church-state separation. They were running away from religious persecution. You don't solve religious persecution by founding a nation on a religious basis. So it's ridiculous all around. But again, I know this. You know this. Why doesn't Chuck Schumer know this? I've been to so many churches of all types. What's true? Oh, we're going back to the other story. The louder a preacher yells, the less they seem to believe it. It's almost as if they're trying to convince themselves of what they're saying about God. Have you noticed that too? Anyway, I'm always hesitant from fundamentalist pastors, as that guy seemed to be, when they suddenly preach liberal Jesus. I think there is some truth to that. The louder they preach, the louder they complain about something, the more you get the feeling they're trying to convince themselves as much as everybody else. But the thing that we know from podcasts and right-wing politicians is that it works on their base. If you are a confident, usually male, usually white, if you're a confident white guy and you speak about anything with any semblance of authority, there's a whole bunch of Americans who are going to believe you. Because the thing about liberals and progressives is that we understand nuance. So you could say, oh yeah, this is a great idea, but there will be complications. And all of that may be true. And people on the right are like, this is how it is. This is a good thing. We were this. And it's ignorant and it misses the nuance, and it could be flat out false. But if you say it with authority, they will believe you. And that explains Joe Rogan. Anything else? Nothing else. I'm going to move on to a different story. Give me 1 second here. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. I don't get to talk about Ken Ham nearly as much as I'd like to. But by the way, this weekend, I am told, is the Ark Encounter protest. And you could find that event information online if you are so interested. And people, what that is a bunch of atheists are outside the premises of Ark Encounter in Kentucky. And they're basically protesting the idea that this is science. It's not. They're protesting the fact that Ark Encounter got some sweet tax breaks that they didn't deserve, and they're screwing over the city and county that they are in. That's what the protest is all about. But anyway, last time I talked about Ken Ham and creationists on this channel, it was because Ark Encounter is celebrating its 10-year anniversary, and it's a good time to remind everyone that the attendance they claimed they were going to get before they opened has never panned out. They got tax breaks as a result of their estimated attendance. They got a lot of sweetheart deals because of the estimated attendance. That attendance has never arrived. And it's not just because of COVID or anything like that. Anyway, the thing I wanted to point out is something very different here, because Ken Ham just released a video because he is trying to trash the media for how they are covering the 10-year anniversary of Ark Encounter. In fact, here is the thumbnail for the video he made about how the media is mean to his baby. And okay, there's Ken Ham. This is ridiculous. I thought for a second, they just used AI or something and they made up a headline. Ark Encounter hates science. That's what the mainstream media says. But then I zoomed in and there's actually a lot of thought put into this. First, they made up an entire name of a newspaper, the Cincinnati Expirer, which, by the way, makes no sense. The actual newspaper is the Cincinnati Enquirer, but that's not really a parody. But also, I thought these were squiggles, like the article. No, it's a real ass article here, and I can't zoom in anymore, but you probably can. They made up an entire article supposedly to describe how the media attacks Ark Encounter. They even made up the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, Mr. What is that there? I.B. Tolerant. Real second grade level satire there. They also had one of the protesters. Her name is Miss M.I.A., Miss Mia Smart. I don't know if that's supposed to be like an anagram of I am smart because we're the cocky ones who protest. Anyway, my point is, they spent more time on this than doing any science at Ark Encounter. But this is what Ken Ham is doing. He put out an entire video about how the media is being mean to him. And his argument is that the media should be objective about his Ark. They shouldn't inject their biases into their articles. And he offered two examples in his video. One example is a newspaper that did it right. Another is a newspaper that got it totally wrong, and that's the one he wants to trash. And here's the example of the newspaper he wants to praise. It's the Northern Kentucky Tribune, and this is the article they posted earlier this month. Ark Encounter to mark 10-year anniversary with guest speakers, concerts, and more beginning July 9th. And Ken Ham says, yes, that is a straightforward headline. And let's just look at the beginning of this. Ark Encounter is celebrating its 10th anniversary with special guest speakers, including 3 astronauts, along with other special events. And they quote Ken Ham in this thing. And okay, I mean, whatever. It looks like a pretty straightforward article. But then I want to show you one thing that if you're not used to how journalism works, you should be. At the very bottom of this article, look what it says right there. For more details, you could visit that URL, but it says Ark Encounter at the bottom. What that tells you is that Ark Encounter sent this article to the newspaper, basically saying, hey, we wrote an article for you. It's a press release. Can you just publish it? Can you copy paste and put this in your newspaper? And this newspaper, I will tell you, they saw the press release. Here's the actual press release. I found this too. Ark Encounter celebrates 10 years in Northern Kentucky. This article was adapted from a news release that was recently distributed to the media. And you could see, it says right there, the popular Ark Encounter themed attraction is celebrating its 10th anniversary with special guest speakers, including 3 astronauts. And you could see what the newspaper did here. They got the email with the press release. They decided, all right, we're not going to say it's popular. That's your opinion. We're not going to do that. But we will say, okay, this might interest local readers. Ark Encounter is having its 10th anniversary. So again, let me just repeat that one more time. Ark Encounter wrote up a press release about their 10th anniversary celebration, posted it on their website, sent it out to media outlets. One newspaper got that press release and basically copied and pasted it in their paper on their website. They made some changes, but not a ton. They basically put it in their paper as is. And Ken Ham, here's what he said in the video. I'm not showing you the clip because Ken Ham will try to take this down. But let me show you what he said. For instance, the Northern Kentucky Tribune simply reported the news. They published our press release, ... And it's like, buddy, I think you kind of gave away the game there. He said they simply reported the news, followed by they published our press release. Those are 2 very different things. They didn't do any reporting. And then Ken Ham adds, that's what journalists used to call reporting the news. No, that's not reporting the news. There was no reporting involved in any of that. They just said, all right, we need space to fill. We have space to fill. Let's just put this damn press release in it. It is an age-old trick. I'm not saying Ark Encounter even did anything shady there. Plenty of places send out press releases all the time, hoping to get coverage. I'm a friggin' blogger, and I get press releases from authors or their agents or whatever, or from anyone saying, hey, my person just wrote a book. Do you want to interview them? And most of the time I look at it, I'm like, no, I'm not interested, and I just delete it. That's what newspapers should do. So none of this is shady, but to say that that is journalism, no, it's not. The newspaper just republished your press release. In fact, Ark Encounter knows this tactic very well because they've done it a lot. In fact, Fox News has done segments on Ark Encounter, and I just want to show you this. This was an actual segment they aired on like Fox and Friends at some point, talking about where can you take your family over the summer. And they say like Ark Encounter features replica of Noah's Ark, and they say it's family friendly. And they do a 5-minute segment where one of the hosts takes her family to the Ark, and it looks really cool. And the thing you got to notice there is I want you to look at this orange bit at the bottom of your screen right here. I'll remove myself and zoom in. This segment is made possible by our sponsor, Ark Encounter. What does that mean? That means Ark Encounter paid Fox and Friends to do a 5-minute ad in the middle of their show, pretending to look like news, but it wasn't news. It was a paid ad. And I've talked about this on this channel before. Fox and Friends has that disclaimer at the bottom of the chyron. And when they posted that clip on Facebook, it even said this is a paid ad. Okay, fine. But when Ark Encounter talked about it on their social media, they said, guys, we were covered by Fox News because we're so important and newsworthy. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what they did. They didn't tell their supporters it was paid product placement, but that's what it was. So Ark Encounter knows very well what paid advertising or like telling someone to write about you looks like because they haven't earned the coverage. Anyway, if that was the good example of a newspaper that does real journalism, what's the bad example? Well, that is this article that was published in the Cincinnati Enquirer, which I will show you right here. Cincinnati, the Enquirer. Here's the headline in the paper. Why astronauts are coming to celebrate anti-science Ark Encounter. And there's a lot happening in this headline, and it's worth talking about. The reporter here, Jolene Almendarez, I'm going to talk about her in a little bit here, but let me explain to you what happened. Cincinnati Enquirer, biggest local paper, biggest paper in that region. They got the same press release. I'm assuming all of this, but this is me speculating. They got the same press release everyone else got. The reporter who covers like that part of Cincinnati probably saw it and said, all right, I got the press release. Is there anything in here that actually is newsworthy? And I think the reporter saw the press release and said, wait a minute, they're bringing astronauts to Ark Encounter? But like, astronauts are real scientists, aren't they? Aren't you supposed to know a lot about science if you're an astronaut? And like, the thing about Ark Encounter is that scientists don't like it because it's a biblical literacy. It takes the Bible literally, right? It's a 6,000-year-old universe. So why are men of science going to Ark Encounter? Not only did she have that thought, she asked one of her associates at the newspaper, maybe an intern or something, hey, Bill Nye famously did a debate with Ken Ham years ago. Can we get in touch with Bill Nye to get a quotation? What does he think about astronauts going to Ark Encounter for their 10th anniversary? And they got a quotation from Bill Nye, who said, among other things, this place is anti-science. Which brings us back to this headline. Why astronauts are coming to celebrate anti-science Ark Encounter. It blends everything that is interesting and newsworthy into one phrase right there. Because astronauts going to Ark Encounter, that's the real story. And there's a reason anti-science is in quotation marks. That's not her opinion. That's Bill Nye's actual phrase that he used. And the story here, if you look here, at the very beginning, 3 astronauts and the president of Hobby Lobby will help celebrate the 10th anniversary of Kentucky's Ark Encounter. Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting bit right there. So, I want to show you one other thing before I dissect this article in a second. The journalist herself, here's how awesome she is. She posted a video online trying to tell her readers, who are not you and me, who know about Ark Encounter. She's trying to explain to them what she found so fascinating and newsworthy about this story that she just published. I want to show you a clip of her TikTok video because I found it so endearing.
Y'all remember those astronauts that were stuck in space for like 9 months last year? Well, one of them, Butch Wilmore, is going to be here in the northern Kentucky area talking about his experience. But there's a twist to their visit here to northern Kentucky. All 3 of them are going to be here as part of the 10th celebration of the Ark Encounter. And Answers in Genesis is what's known as like biblical literalism. So they believe that Genesis, when it says in the Bible, when it says God created the world in 6 days, that it's a literal 6 days. But if you're watching this video, I don't want you to think that this is sort of just a small group of people and some small little attraction. Like, it's not. The Ark Encounter, Answers in Genesis, it's done nothing but grow since it opens. Like, literally, the Ark Encounter is on 800 acres. And, just for reference, Disneyland is 500 acres. So this has really become a religious theme park, and it's opened the floodgates for religious tourism here in Kentucky.
She's adorable, and I respect the hell out of her. But one thing you could tell from that video is she's not an activist. She is not us. She's just like, hey, people who live in the Cincinnati area, this is a thing that's happening, and it's really interesting. And let me try to explain to you why I find it interesting, which I love it. I would watch her make TikToks about anything there. Ken Ham read the article, maybe one of his minions read it to him. I don't know how he works, but he said, quote, "That's not reporting the news. That's framing the story with a conclusion before readers even begin reading." He's talking about the anti-science in quotation marks in the headline. By the way, quick answer. I know some of you are wondering which astronauts are coming to Ark Encounter. I will tell you in just a second. But honestly, there's a way Ken Ham could argue this article actually works in his favor, because you could see this headline and make an argument that this is pro Ark Encounter because astronauts are coming there, even though some critics call it anti-science. He could spin this as a win if he wanted to, but he's not, because he's just perpetually pissed off and nothing ever makes him happy. One of the other things he said is that this reporter and her assistant reached out to Bill Nye. Ken Ham said, The reporter repeatedly appeals to what credible scientists or mainstream science supposedly believes. But who decides which scientists are credible? Is a scientist no longer credible simply because he or she believes Genesis? Yeah, man, that's exactly how it works. If you believe in a literal interpretation of Genesis, that means you are ignoring scientific reality, and that means you are not credible in the world of science. That's how credibility works. What are you talking about? And the truth is, you can be an accomplished person with batshit crazy beliefs. Look at JD Vance, who's a lawyer. Look at everyone who is famous for being a conspiracy theorist, but they have some sort of advanced degree. You can actually, there have been articles written about people with PhDs in science from public universities and PhDs in like biology or something similar who are young earth creationists. And when the articles are like, how does that even make any sense? They say, well, when I was doing my dissertation or when I was publishing articles, I just played the game. I just pretended I cared about old earth, that the universe is billions of years old, because I know that's what they want to hear. I don't actually believe it. And I got my PhD because I'm smart, which, you know what? You played the game? Okay, fine, interesting. But the point is, you can have an advanced degree and still be a crackpot. Or on the flip side, you could be David Barton and have no advanced degree or no beginner's degree, really, and pretend you are a historian. The point is, people will believe anything. So, people have their blind spots. But nothing in the article is anti-God. Let's actually go through some of this article, okay? Because I want to show you that nothing in the article itself is anti-anything. At the Ark Encounter, placards claim the Earth is only a few thousand years old instead of 4.5 billion years, as the vast majority of scientists agree. And displays show dinosaurs like velociraptors in bamboo cages, alive at the same time as humans, which mainstream science also debunks. All of that is true. I don't know what part of that is anti-anything. That is accurate. That is what Ark Encounter says, or the Creation Museum says. And yes, the vast majority of scientists, people who work in the field and do this stuff every day, that is what they reject. So, like, what part of this is unfair to Ken Ham? Now, here's another bit I want to show you. Who are the astronauts? First, you have Charlie Duke, Jeff Williams, and Barry Wilmore. This article says all of them are young Earth creationists, meaning they believe the Earth is about 6,000 years old. So let's see what they explain here. Charlie Duke was the 10th person to walk on the moon, Apollo 16. And then the reporter tries to explain how this makes sense. During his time on the moon, he collected moon rocks estimated to be more than 4 billion years old. But after his time at NASA, he became a born-again Christian and believes in the literal interpretation of Genesis. So, astronaut number 1 became a young Earth creationist after doing all the astronaut stuff. How about Jeff Williams? During Williams' time at NASA, he spent over 500 days in space throughout 4 missions. In an interview with the Institute of Creation Research, he said he doesn't find a conflict between science and scripture. If you have a presupposition that excludes the possibility of a God, that excludes the possibility of supernatural acts, and that everything has to be explained just with natural processes, then you've basically limited what you can let the objective observation of science will tell you. Which is a long way of saying he's just redefining science to allow creationism to have a way in. But the point is, how can this guy go up to space and be a young Earth creationist? Because the shit he was doing in space and to earn the scientific knowledge to get into space, it actually doesn't have much to do with whether or not you believe the age of the Earth. It's true. So you can be a scientist, you could be an astronaut, and never have to think about the age of the Earth because it's not your field. And last guy, what was his name again? Barry Wilmore. Wilmore was one of 2 astronauts temporarily stuck on the International Space Station for nearly 300 days before making it back to Earth in March 2025. He believes in young Earth creationism. Same as the last guy. Yeah, People have crackpot beliefs. Okay, whatever. Again, if I were Ken Ham, I would try to make the argument, look, these are astronauts who have done extraordinary things and they believe what I believe, and they're coming to my place to celebrate the 10th anniversary. And this reporter is saying exactly that. So it's a win-win for everybody. Nope, Ken Ham is still on his diatribe about how this reporter is mean to him. And one other thing Ken Ham said in the video, and I'm quoting, "Does this reporter have expertise in science? Does she have training in theology? Not what I've been able to research." And you know Ken Ham's research skills are just perfect. First of all, she doesn't need a degree in science to write about Ark Encounter's celebration. Who cares? Also, who needs training in theology? The fact that you think she does suggests that this is a religious thing and not a scientific thing at all. Anyway, this reporter committed the grave crime of journalism 101, right? As the famous saying goes in journalism, if there is a thunderstorm outside and your job is to cover it, and there's some idiot out there who says it is not raining, your job is not to say, some people believe there's a thunderstorm outside, but some people do not. That is bad journalism. Your job is to go outside, figure out if it's raining, and then tell me what the hell is going on. And that's what this journalist did. She said, okay, Ark Encounter's having a celebration, but they're young Earth creationists and the astronauts are coming there. Okay, most scientists say all of this is bullshit, but it is still interesting from like a sociological point of view. But also, she did interview people who are young Earth creationists, but correctly framed it as saying scientists don't believe this shit, which is accurate. So anyway, Ken Ham said this was an opinion piece. It's not an opinion piece. It is straight journalism. And I did reach out to the reporter, in case you're wondering, just to say, hey, Ken Ham made this video about you. Do you have anything to say in response? And she just told me, as of, I think this morning, she just said, I'll let the article speak for itself, which is the right answer, even if I want her to say something against Ken Ham. She's more professional than me. So, all right, I will leave it there. What questions do we have here? I feel like you should be willing to agree with scientists who specialize in their fields if you're going to be in science. To an extent, I do think you're right, but like, I don't need you to agree with them. I think the whole point of science is I'm going to go against the grain here. However, I'm going to try to test my theory, even if it is unpopular. That's the difference between a scientist who has a far out theory and Ken Ham, because Ken Ham has not done the work, and no one on his staff has either, of saying we believe this about evolution that no other scientists believe, and because the Bible says it, it's valid. No, that's not how it works. Go ahead and prove creationism is true, or disprove evolution. Tell us something that could not have happened through evolution, and they have failed every single time. That's the problem with Ken Ham's theory. The problem is not that we want scientists to just flat out agree with everyone else, but you got to understand why they got to that point. And if you're going to disagree with them about something so fundamental, you better have a damn good reason for it. And in this case, Ken Ham doesn't. So that's why he is not credible. Whereas scientists who might be edgy, pushing the envelope in some way, their job is to tell us why they think they're right. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're allowed to think everyone is wrong about something. Every scientific paper in the world is, here's a thing we don't know already. Maybe it contradicts what we thought we knew, but here's our evidence to back it up. And it's in a peer-reviewed journal. They don't do that at Creation, at Answers in Genesis. Instead, they put out their own journal that is like made with crayons so that they could say, well, our stuff is published in a journal. No, that you don't get to make up your own fictional universe and then pretend it's legit. Thanks for that donation. Say more about the Ark Encounter protest. I just moved to Southern Illinois. I may be able to attend. Also, they probably use Grok to write the thumbnail. That may be true with the Ken Ham thumbnail. You know what? We will thank you. There's the link that you need. if you are interested, what I've been there before a few years ago, but really it's a group of pro-science people gathering kind of at the off-ramp before you get to Ark Encounter, basically holding up signs saying Ark Encounter is not science. The city of Williamstown deserves better than this, talking about why what you see inside there is not legit accepted science. They're not going into Ark Encounter and causing a ruckus. They're just trying to make it known that what they believe in Ark Encounter is not universally accepted, which you might be tricked into believing if you don't step outside your religious bubble. So that's what the protest is. I strongly urge you to go there if you are able. And you could check out all the information there. The oldest female astronaut, Wally Funk, just died last night. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I did not know that. Thank you for sharing. All right, I'm going to jump to another story. I think there's one more big one, and then I got a few much shorter ones to talk about. But oh boy, you're going to not like the next one. Give me one moment here. All right. Every now and then I come across a video that is going viral for religious reasons, and I expect it to be like a pastor saying something ridiculous, but this time it was shocking for not that reason. I'm just going to show you screenshots because I don't want to play this person's videos for you, but this is what I saw that was being shared online. It's from someone who goes by Lady Sarah Elizabeth on her social media accounts. And whatever, she's dancing while kids are in the background. It's like one of those TikTok, Instagram reels. But look at the caption. Oh my God. Had 6 kids in 7 years to help the white race from going extinct. That took a dark and twisted turn. There was another video of hers that was also her walking with her children, and let's bring back large white Christian families. Oh boy, that's a trip. And then, as you know I will do, I went down the rabbit hole of what else has she posted. And look, like I said, I'm not going to play any of her stuff for you, but I will show you some of these thumbnails, and you can read these for yourself. It's all along the same lines. This woman seems to have babies for the sole purpose of telling the internet, yeah, I just had a white baby, and I'm going to pop out another white baby real soon. So if you don't like it, it's because you're reverse racist. Had another white baby to help my race not go extinct. Because truly, the biggest problem humanity faces is not enough white people. Ladies, I need some help. I can't help the white race from going extinct by myself, which I think means she's telling other white girls to go get it on, which is a weird way to do it because you know this person is also into purity culture. But whatevs. So then I was trying to figure out where did this person come from? How prevalent is this? Because it's not weird to me that a Christian nationalist would also be racist. Those two things go very much hand in hand. And this is also why whenever we talk about Christian nationalism, I think it's really important that we say it is white Christian nationalism, because all of these factors go hand in hand. The people who are Christian nationalists, who want to see our country with conservative Christian laws when it comes to abortion and LGBTQ people, they also want to make sure immigrants from, as Donald Trump would call it, shithole nations don't get in here. So if you're from Norway, fine. If you're a white person from South Africa, fine. But all the other countries, no, because this stuff all goes hand in hand. They are religious, they are Christian, and they are racist. That stuff goes together. And in the case of Sarah Elizabeth, what you find if you scroll through her social media is she is a right-wing, Elon Musk-pilled, Charlie Kirk-loving, great replacement theory accepting, anti-immigrant, racist Christian that has taken hold in the Republican Party. And it makes a lot of sense when you realize that her husband, which you're not going to believe this, her husband, also white. Guess what he does? They will go to Trump rallies. That's her right there. That's him. He's a reverend, and he preached at a Trump rally before the 2024 election. In fact, let me show you this clip or this article from NBC News around this time, because this husband of hers, Joel Tenney, she's Sarah Elizabeth Tenney, he's Joel Tenney. They're well known in these MAGA racist circles. At a December rally in Coralville, Iowa, the Reverend Joel Tenney spoke ahead of Trump, telling the several hundred supporters gathered that he wanted to talk to them as a pastor. It's why he's wearing the collar. We have witnessed a sitting president weaponize the entire legal system to try and steal an election and imprison his leading opponent, Donald Trump, despite committing no crime. Donald Trump committed lots of the crimes, and I never understand how the people who are like, the problem with Joe Biden, he's too old, he's sleepy. Also, he's weaponizing the whole legal system and trying to arrest Trump. You can't do both. If you're sleepy, you don't get to be able to control the world. We must re-elect President Trump for the third time, lying about number 2 right there, because it's part of a spiritual battle with demonic forces at play. His voice trembling at times like a tent revival preacher behind a Trump emblazoned podium, he continued. When Donald Trump becomes the 47th president of the United States, there will be retribution against all those who have promoted evil in this country. My dude, the evil is like right here. You're standing next to him and taking a picture. Maybe you're not a good person who can spot evil. So Joel Tenney runs a ministry called Alpha Pneuma Ministries, and as far as I could tell, it doesn't do anything. I don't even know that he preaches anywhere or has any sort of congregation. I think it's a one-man show, but you can raise a lot of money if you say you're a ministry that you can't get if you say, I'm just a racist white guy trying to take your money, so give it to me. But anyway, back to his racist wife, Sarah Elizabeth Tenney. Besides the whole I hate birth control, Christian fundamentalism of it all, she's gone all in on the idea that what the world needs right now is more white people to undo the damage of non-white people and mixed race families. Because this was an interesting TikTok right here that she made. I'm not sure. I'm not playing it for you. But first of all, that the looks are creepy. Stop that. That's weird. So instead of calling white people colonizers and oppressors, why don't you show some appreciation for white people bringing us all into modernity and inventing, all modern technology? I'm sure this sounds very deep if you're an idiot. I don't get it. There is a website that tracks hate speech and extremism, and I want to show you what they said about Sarah Elizabeth, because they've covered her in the past. This is globalextremism.org. Tenney frequently frames having a large white family as both a religious calling and a racial imperative. In March, Tenney posted a video of her and her husband overlaid with the words, POV, you know your race is a minority race and need to bring it back to its former glory, so you have 6 kids. Another post from February featuring a video of her family overlaid with the words, Christians, let's start trusting God and grow our families. The Muslim and other religions are having large families and openly say they are going to outbreed us. God's first commandment, be fruitful and multiply. I will never understand the social media lifestyle people whose entire identity is I have babies and you don't. And here's why this matters. Among the many influencers posting this racist content, Sarah is the most popular and has the most powerful connections. And that, I think, is the part that really got to me. This is not some random fringe person that I'm just cherry picking out of a lineup or something. This is someone who is tied in to right-wing influencers. That's why her husband could speak at a Trump rally. And why isn't that a bigger deal that a white supremacist like that guy, or whatever they want to call themselves, like, why, I'm just a white nationalist. I don't think whites are better. I just think we all need our own countries. The fact that that wasn't a bigger deal should be appalling to everybody. But I want to repeat, this is why we call it white Christian nationalism, because there's a lot of overlap between the racists and the religious racists. They go to church, the same type of churches. They work for this Republican administration. Stephen Miller is not overtly religious when he speaks, but he's overtly racist. J.D. Vance is a mixture of both the way he talks. It doesn't matter that he's married to someone who looks like me. Clarence Thomas is like the biggest white supremacist in the country, the most powerful white supremacist in the country. Doesn't matter. It's the ideology here. And the thing is, all of these people are welcome in those right-wing spaces. And the people in their orbit are just as guilty of perpetuating this sort of ideology. So in Tenney's case, Sarah Elizabeth's case, she creates a lot of straw men to justify why she is racist. She says people want her to have abortions. No, we don't. We don't think about you, honey. No one cares what you do. She says they're offended by her kids. Why would I care about? I don't think about your damn kids. Who cares? She says everyone believes she's promiscuous, which no one, if you have a lot of kids when you're married, promiscuity isn't the thought I have. I might think of a clown car, but like, I don't care if you're having sex, but also, even if you were single and having a lot of kids, who the hell cares? None of my business. Why do you think people on the left are going to be worried that you're having sex? No one cares. If anything, go have it. My God. She's one of these people who just thinks the entire world revolves around her and her kids, right? And it's everyone's constantly thinking about her existence. And she responds by pretending to be a voice of reason when all she's doing is disproving white supremacy. Also, she posted repeatedly that she's having kids to protect the white race. Like, if the only reason you're having kids is because you want to perpetuate your race and not because you want to have kids, you love children, like, maybe you're telling on yourself. Every child she has is conceived out of spite. So it's so weird. I did appreciate what one internet stranger said to her. This is a post she made. How I feel having pushed out 6 white babies in 7 years. And I don't know what she's supposed to be doing. I assume this was a dance of sorts. And she feels weird, to which a commenter said, "Congrats to you and your brother." Which, beautiful. Well played. I love it. Anyway, God, these people are so infuriating. This couple was, they kind of started their family, I think, in Iowa. They now live in Armenia, as far as I could tell. But all of this is not purely an internet phenomenon, because this stuff has real world implications. When we talk about immigration, what you hear from Republicans are phrases like family values and demographic change or protecting Western civilization. And it's all coded language that says we got to protect white people in America. The Tennies don't bother with euphemisms because they know the people who watch them, not out of spite like me, but because they agree with them. They know they're all racist too. Like, why hide the white supremacy when you can just throw some Bible verses into the mix and assume your viewers are going to be cool with it? But this is not new. As I said earlier today, Christianity can be used to justify slavery, just like it can be used against it. Same with segregation. There have always been Christians who use the Bible to defend atrocities, and yes, Christians who use the Bible to oppose it. But you cannot deny the role that Christianity is playing right now in propping up this American-based racial hierarchy. That is why white Christian nationalism is such a problem. It's not just about putting prayer in schools or Ten Commandments posters on the walls. Like, these people want to define what America looks like theologically and literally. And that means people like you and me, definitely me, are not welcome here. And it's how they can convince their base that every election represents an existential threat to their way of life. Because everyone who doesn't look like them or think like them, whether it's a Muslim mayor who's doing politics really well right now, or a Democratic socialist congresswoman who is the most exciting member of Congress, or a Jewish city council member somewhere, they treat all of them as an enemy. Because when you can't attack them for their politics, because like Medicare for all is a good idea, you go after them for what they represent to your racist's tiny brain. And that's why you got to have an army of white Christian soldiers to fight back somehow, which, by the way, you can also use to boost your social media pages until they're old enough to go to war. By the way, I think it also needs to be said that they are assuming, Sarah Elizabeth is assuming, that all of her kids are also going to grow up to have white partners and white kids. That's the only way her logic makes any sense here, that she's having all these white babies to perpetuate the race. That assumes they're all going to act like her, think like her, marry white people, have white babies. That's not how anything works. I mean, statistically, it's possible one of those kids is gay. It is possible, it's really possible, that some of those kids are going to marry someone who is not white, right? And they're also not necessarily going to share her politics. And when they grow up and they find out what their mommy did when they were babies, I suspect a lot of them are going to be really disgusted by it and want nothing to do with her brand of white supremacy. And she will have time alone when her kids don't visit her to think about that. But this is what passes for family values in certain corners of the Christian internet. And I think more conservative Christians need to speak out against this. Otherwise, I'm going to keep assuming that they're cool with it. Because until I hear otherwise, it's safe to assume this is what white Christians are, conservative Christians are thinking. All right, I'm going to stop there. Questions here. So should we tell her that the only race is the human race? How much melanin you have is not a race. By the way, you know what? You know who says that all the time? Creationist Ken Ham. He's like, he's doing the Colbert satire character where he's like, I don't see race. I don't even see color anywhere. And he says, we have one race, the human race. Okay, but conservative Christians are racist. And if you don't understand that, you're not helping when you say this. Race only applies to sociology. It doesn't matter outside that context. There's no noble reason to only have a population with a certain melatonin level. Thank you for pointing that out. You're right. I mean, it's a social construct. Also, it doesn't even make sense. You can find white people, or you could find people who are like from Africa, but with very light skin, and vice versa. So this idea that you're having a white baby as if we can look and tell, you don't necessarily know. There's a lot of people who pass as white who are very much not. Just dumb. Oh, thank you for that donation. Had a very long discussion back in early 2024 with an evangelical conservative friend, and fellow Star Trekkie. It's because of MAGA and him being open-minded, he refused to support the Tangerine Mussolini and supports humanism. Very interesting. I'm glad you were able to have that discussion with that conservative friend, and that whether you did it yourself or played a role in it, it's honestly, those face-to-face conversations probably go the longest way in trying to flip some of these people and walk them away from the edge of the cliff here. Thank you. In fairness, I do want her to stop having kids and to stop any pregnancies she does have. That's more to do with the fact she will exploit those kids to hell. True. And I mean, I will say, I feel the same way anytime I see any sort of influencer use their kids on social media. I don't like it. I've deliberately gone out of my way to make sure it doesn't happen in my case. I don't like it. Let them decide if they want to be on the internet when they are old enough to decide that for themselves. And baby is not the age. I don't care if she wants to have a bunch of kids, that's her business, but I am very concerned that she's going to be raising them with this racist ideology. Very true. Same is true for all the harmful ideologies out there. That's the concern. And again, if she's worried about birth rates and American birth rates or something like that, this is what people who want to reduce abortion rates could argue all the time, which is if you want to have fewer abortions and you want people to have more babies, you know what you do? You invest in maternal health care and you invest in childhood education and you make it cheaper and easier for people to have babies if they want to. And what do Republicans do? Everything that's the opposite of that. So it's hard to have babies when you can't afford your own life right now. And this goes back to affordability. And who's fighting for affordability? It's not MAGA Republicans. All right, I'm jumping. I promise the rest of these are shorter, but important. Okay. Let me talk about this Republican running for Congress, running for the US House from Florida, because I had not heard of him until like this week. And now I feel like I know way too much about the guy. And it's not necessarily because of a scandal, it's because he did an interview and he just allowed himself to talk because no one was there to tell him to shut up. So we're talking about this guy right here. His name is Rod Joseph, and he's an evangelical Christian and a candidate from Florida. He's one of several Republicans running for a seat in the now gerrymandered state of Florida. However, the district in which he is running is still, even after the gerrymandering, it's one of the few very blue districts in the state. That means the competition in the primary is interesting, but odds are a Democrat's going to win the seat. But you still want to look to see which Republicans are running for this seat that they're probably going to lose. And how are they running for it? Are they running by trying not to be extreme? Or are they running by being extreme as possible? Because that's how you win over crazy ass Republican voters. And in the case of Rod Joseph, it appears that his answer is I'm going to be as crazy as possible. So which part of Florida are they in? They are in South Florida, specifically a district that includes Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, and Oakland Park, which I read is considered a hub for LGBTQ people. That's why it's super Democratic. It's a very blue district. So here's what happened. Because he is a Republican who is campaigning in their primary, and the primary is happening much later, he was doing an interview with the local newspaper, the Sun Sentinel, because they're going to probably do endorsements of candidates from both parties. So he was sitting for an interview. And one of the questions that came up was something we've talked about on this channel, which is a congressman named Andy Ogles of Tennessee. In early June, he tweeted something that said, quote, "Homosexuality has no place in America. Happy Nuclear Family Month." Homosexuality has no place in America. He wrote that online. He quickly deleted it because that was too far for even some Republicans who reached out and said, no, gay people do exist. They are part of America. So, like, your bigotry is not helping our party. Interesting. Andy Ogles then deleted that tweet and immediately blamed an unnamed staffer for writing it. Sure, even though it matched exactly the sort of stuff Andy Ogles has tweeted for years. But the question was, because you are running for Congress in a district that has a lot of LGBTQ people, what do you think, Rod Joseph, about the idea that homosexuality has no place in America? And I want to show you what Rod Joseph said. The video has not been released, so this is just working off of the Sun Sentinel article. "You cannot be born gay. That's impossible biologically." Let's just stop there for let's read on. Joseph said, "Sexuality is a preference, not an inherent orientation. sexual preference from the Roman Empire to date. It's always a preference. Uh-huh. So this guy thinks you choose to be gay, which is a talking point I thought we had gotten rid of like 20 years ago. I thought we all kind of knew by now no one's choosing to be gay. Why would anyone choose a life that is bound to be harder in a lot of ways? Right? But like even white evangelical churches and the Catholic Church and the Mormon Church, by and large, even they, if you ask them what they think about homosexuality, they will say it is a sin. It's not a sin to be gay. We understand people might be gay, but we're going to draw the line at acting on it. So you cannot do the gay stuff. That's where like conservative churches are at. But Rod Joseph here is still going back to before that time where he's like, you can't be born gay. It's not a thing. So he's wrong about that. Also, the Roman Empire, super gay. Anyway, what else does he say here? In an interview Tuesday, he also said he's concerned that people are somehow indoctrinated or influenced to become LGBTQ. Most of the people, they're victims of sexual abuse at the very young age. So now his argument is that they're not born gay. They have the gay like beaten into them, which again, talking point from like 20 years ago that I thought we had debunked. Being gay is not the result of abuse you suffered as a child. That's not how it works. There are studies done about, like, what do you want at this point to prove to you that that talking point doesn't make any sense? But no, we don't care about your kids. No one's interested in grooming your child to be trans. It's not a thing that exists unless you're in a right-wing bubble where that's like the only way people become LGBTQ. But that's not a thing. It's not because people are grooming them to be gay, and it's not because they are abused at a young age. This guy is lying or stupid or both. But wait, he's not done yet. To support his view that individuals choose their sexual orientation, Joseph said people should look at the natural habitat. You never see a lion that mates with a male lion for life. You never see a male giraffe that mates with a giraffe. Myself right now saying I am a giraffe, that doesn't make it true, which I think is how he thinks trans people work. You just say one day, you wake up and you're like, I'm the other gender now, and you expect everyone to just go with it. It's not how trans people work. But also this argument that lions and giraffes are never gay. You would never see that. I will give a lot of credit to the Sun Sentinel, which followed up that paragraph with this one. A 2025 documentary, Animal Pride, Nature's Coming Out Story, and a 2024 documentary, Queer Planet, reported there are indeed giraffes, lions, and other animals that engage in same-sex behavior. Yeah, the gay happens in the animal kingdom. And this guy doesn't know that either. But he's just out there bearing his entire ass for the world to see by saying the dumbest shit as soon as the microphone is in front of his face. So he's not just a bigot. He's like a dumb bigot. Elsewhere in the interview, he also said he's anti-abortion. And this is fascinating. If you look up this guy's political history, what you will find is that in the past 2 election cycles, he ran for U.S. House in the past, and he ran for U.S. Senate in the past as a Democrat. And you know, shockingly, he didn't even come close in either one of those primaries, but he ran as a Democrat as recently as 2024. And now he says, oh, my party got too liberal, and that's when I became a Republican. Like, my dude, I don't think the party changed. This is a district that was represented by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I believe. She is no one's idea of a progressive. So this idea that the Democrats got too liberal for me is bullshit. His website, I want to show you this too. This is his website, his campaign website, where he says, Dr. Rod Joseph. You know what I didn't check? I wonder where he got his doctorate from. Is it a real? Someone find this out while I'm talking. Where did he get his doctorate from? A real place or a fake Christian school. But it says he's born in Haiti and raised with strong evangelical Christian values. I mean, first of all, values? No. But evangelical Christian, yep, that definitely explains a lot about this guy. No word yet on how he would handle what happens if his kids come out as gay or anything like that. But anyway, if he thought this interview was going to catapult him to the top of the Republican primary, I'm not sure it did him any favors, because even the other GOP candidates, they didn't say what he said, but they also gave equally bigoted answers. One of them said, I don't know how God made people, which that was her response to God making gay people, I guess. And a third candidate said, I disagree with Rod Joseph, but didn't elaborate. So who knows what the third Republican believes? I don't know. I hope, best case scenario, it doesn't matter who wins the Republican primary, because the Democrat, whoever it is going to win. And maybe that's why the Democrats they have running in for this seat are so bad at this. They're so bad at giving a good answer, regardless of what you believe, which is what smarter politicians do. But that means when you have a race, I mean, I'll tell you a story. In Illinois, close to where I am at, not my personal congressional district, but a neighboring one, a few years ago, it's a pretty blue district. So the Democrat running for office was an incumbent. No one was worried that he wasn't going to get reelected. So Republicans weren't really even going to run a candidate. Why waste money on a seat you're definitely going to lose? So what happened? A crazy person jumped into the race as a Republican, and he was a flat out, he said he was a Nazi. Not joking, like he openly was that. And the Republicans then had to jump in to say, you're absolutely not running because you're going to take other candidates down with you, even though you're probably welcome at our club meetings. But that's the thing. When you are in a blue district or a red district, that means the other party's candidates, they're not going to be the cream of the crop. You're going to get the people who have no business running an election, because the people who are smart politicians know, I'm not going to win this, so there's no reason to run. And I think that's what happened here. So after he did all this and he got backlash from that interview with the Sun Sentinel, Rod Joseph posted this on Facebook. My faith teaches me that every person is made in God's image and deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. No exceptions. Okay, but if gay people are made in God's image and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, you can't do that when you are trashing who they are as people, when you're denying a vital part of who they are, when you want to take away their rights. So he's lying again. In interviews, I speak from that same faith when I talk about my personal beliefs on marriage and family. Look at what he's doing here. He's saying, yeah, I did say something bigoted, but you can't be mad at me because I did it because I'm a Christian. Therefore, I'm immune from your criticism. I understand not everyone shares my religious convictions, and I respect that. No, wrong answer. No one cares about your religion. We care what you're going to do with it. And this guy is a bigot. Like, that's it. I don't care if he's a bigot because he read the Bible for 2 minutes or if he's a bigot because he goes to the club meetings. It doesn't matter. He doesn't actually treat people with dignity. And again, he's representing an LGBTQ heavy population in the district in which he is running. I don't get it. I don't know if he's going to win, but it's clear he doesn't think his hate is going to hurt him, which honestly, that's probably accurate. Spreading hate, that's normal in Republican primaries and Republican general elections at this point. And so I get his strategy. It would be nice if he lost because of that, but yeah, he has a chance because he's a bigoted Republican and they love that sort of thing. All right, I'll stop there. What questions we got here? There are even some living creatures on Earth that can actually change gender on their own. I don't know enough about this. I'll take your word on it, but like Animal Kingdom sort of thing where they change genders or something, you'll have to explain more to me. U.S. Army veteran and political candidate Dr. Rod Joseph earned his PhD in International Relations and Diplomacy from Cornerstone University of Florida. So 2 questions. International relations and diplomacy is not biology, and it's not anything that has to do with what he was talking about, but I'm not discrediting that. What is Cornerstone University is my follow-up question. Is that a conservative Christian school that's like fake, but they call themselves a university cause? Or is that like some Florida school that I have just never heard of? And while you were looking that up, it does not appear to be accredited. My gut assumption was right. All right, what else we got here? Anything else? Oh, thanks for that donation. There's a saying, the Romans were gay because they liked men. The Greeks were gay because they hated women. I have not heard that. That's a good one. Thank you. All right, I'm jumping to another story here. One moment. I have a good news story for you. I know it doesn't happen often. I have like one a year, and here it is. I'm also wondering what the hell we are talking about in the comments where a giraffe got lost. I'll deal with that later. Okay. I want to tell you about a hospital system in southwestern Michigan. And for several years, it was owned by the Catholic Church. They owned a system called the Ascension Health System, which doesn't sound Catholic on the surface, but this is how a lot of Catholic health systems work. They have these bland sounding names, and you don't even know they're Catholic unless you do a deep dive. And why is that an issue? And this is worth talking about before I get to the good news here, because when you are in a Catholic hospital, Catholic hospitals are not interested in doing what's best for patients. They are interested in doing what the Catholic Church says is okay for patients. And who makes those calls? In the United States, it's the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. So basically a bunch of white male virgins. Maybe they're not all white, but they're all virgins. And according to them, anything involving contraception, well, that's forbidden by the Catholic Church. So we can't have that, which means in Catholic hospitals, you cannot get a tubal ligation. You cannot get a vasectomy. You can't get a tubal ligation even if you're a woman and a future pregnancy might put your life in danger. They're not going to do abortions for obvious reasons. But as I've talked about recently, what happens if you have an ectopic pregnancy and the only solution is aborting the egg, the fertilized egg that has lodged itself into a place it should not be? Unless you're like on your deathbed, they're not going to do the operation if they think it could kill the egg. So like ectopic pregnancies are problems in Catholic churches. What if a woman has a miscarriage, which is already emotionally draining, but Catholic hospitals make things worse? Because if you have a miscarriage, a normal hospital might induce an abortion to make sure the embryonic tissue is removed from a woman's body to prevent infection. At a Catholic hospital, they will usually wait until the woman is infected before providing treatment. I said they're not providing contraception. What happens if you're a victim of sexual assault and you need birth control immediately? Well, if you go to a Catholic hospital, they may not help you. They may not give it to you. And if there's any chance you're already pregnant by the time you go to one of those hospitals, that help is even less likely. I said they don't do vasectomies. They will not help you if you're a woman who wants to use a sperm donor to get pregnant. They won't help you if you want to use a surrogate mother to give birth to your biological child, because the Catholic Church says that's immoral. And Catholic hospitals are bad at the other end of life too. What if you're in a state where end of life care is allowed? What if you're someone dying of a terminal disease and you're in pain and you want to end life on your own terms? If you're at a Catholic hospital, too damn bad. They're going to force you to suffer against your will, even in a state where that sort of thing is legal. So obviously, they're not going to help you if you're trans or you need hormone treatment or a hysterectomy or a mastectomy if you're trans. Like, in short, Catholic hospitals are better known for the procedures they don't provide. That's why they've been the source of so many stories, never good ones, in the past. And the people they tend to hurt tend to be low-income people or women or LGBTQ people. and people who don't necessarily have the luxury of deciding what hospital they want to go to in an emergency. Or sometimes the Catholic hospital is the only one that your insurance provider says is in your network. So those are the people who have to go to a Catholic hospital, and they don't realize the menu is a lot smaller than they think. So why am I telling you all of this? Because last year, in April of 2025, this is the headline that appeared in southwestern Michigan. Ascension, Borgess, Kalamazoo, and 3 other hospitals are going to be sold to Indiana-based health system. The 4 hospitals that made up this Catholic hospital network, along with dozens of outpatient clinics that they also ran, all of that was going to be sold to some outside group. And a few months later, in July of 2025, that actually happened. Ascension Borgess Hospitals officially sold, now part of Beacon Health System. And so what happened here? An outside nonprofit group, a secular nonprofit group that's based in Indiana, said, we want to take over those hospitals in southwestern Michigan, not too far from us. And we want to take over all of your stuff. Now, what does that mean logistically? It means all the patient information has to transfer over. That's not easy to do. You wonder if the staff that they have at the Catholic hospitals and clinics, are they all going to transfer over? There's a lot of logistical hurdles they got to work through, but that's what they've spent the past year doing. And guess what's happened? This month, they announced it's done. Beacon has taken over the health system, and that happened a year ago, but it's now been a year that everything's been in place. And I want to show you this headline I saw that is a new one from this week. No longer Catholic, Kalamazoo Hospital adds reproductive health services under new ownership. So a secular hospital system took over the Catholic hospital system, and everything got better. I want to show you some of this article. It's amazing. Let's talk about the changes. A major change at Beacon Health has been the addition of reproductive health services that were not offered previously by Ascension Borgess prior to the transition. Starting July 1st, 2025, the day Beacon acquired the 4 hospitals, Beacon began offering tubal ligations and a wider variety of intrauterine devices and birth control products. A group of urologists will soon be joining Beacon Kalamazoo and perform vasectomies. Beacon Health System welcomes and supports all individuals who follow our region's wide breadth of belief systems, spiritual and faith traditions. Oh my God, that is amazing. So the secular, and by secular, I just mean not Catholic, they took over the system and only good things happened. This is what happened when doctors are your priority, or doctors are more of a priority than dogma, right? The hospitals, I will tell you, the Beacon hospitals, they said they don't do abortions, but not because of any religious thing. That's just a lot of hospitals don't perform abortions. They will say, hey, you should go to this clinic to get that done. And Beacon will do that. They will give you a referral to another place to have that procedure done. So that part itself is not that weird. Only 4% of abortions are performed in hospitals in the US. But who knew that all you had to do to improve patient care was provide patient care, right? It says a lot that Catholic oversight left this hospital system and everyone feels like things got better. The buildings did not change. It seems like the staffers did not suddenly get more qualified. It's by and large a lot of overlap with the staff. But medical care no longer requires a bishop to come in and green light whatever it is a doctor wants to do. That's the news. And I want to be clear, none of this is to say that the American healthcare system is working. It's not. It's fundamentally broken, and I'm sure there are plenty of normal problems with this hospital system. So I'm not saying that this is the solution to everything. But when secular hospitals take over Catholic ones, it's very much a win-win for everyone involved, given the alternative. And it raises another question too. When there are so many communities that are dependent on hospitals and who need hospitals, why are so many communities, why do they have to rely on Catholic hospitals that will not provide legal, medically appropriate care for the patients in that community, right? Americans should not have to hope a secular healthcare system swoops in and buys out your local Catholic hospital system just so you receive a bare minimum of care. So stories like this should not be anomalies. They should be the norm. But as far as news goes, this is relatively good news. I'll stop there. What questions we got here? These red states don't care if women go septic. They are sexist. Yeah, I don't disagree. And remember, the Trump signed one big beautiful bill. What did it do? Among many things, it took away money from healthcare and forced the shutdown of a lot of rural hospitals. So Republicans made it harder to get any sort of health care. If you're in a red state that doesn't have an alternative, it's even worse. Health gets weird because states have their own boards and health departments. Meanwhile, the company runs on the laws of the state it's based in. That is accurate. And again, in Michigan, which is a blue state right now, by and large, give or take, swing state, whatever, they're lucky that they have Democrats in charge because you don't have to jump through other hurdles. But you're right. If you're living in Texas, even if it is a secular run hospital system, you may not get the care you need because Republicans, who are largely religious, don't want you to have it. All right, I'm jumping to another story. Just a couple more here. These are quick ones, but I think they're interesting. The Pew Research Center recently put out survey results that I found genuinely surprising and not in a good way. Basically, the bottom line of what they said is that a majority of Americans now support public school teachers leading students in prayer in the classroom. It's very disturbing. 53% of Americans say teachers should be allowed to lead kids in prayer in class, with the caveat that it shouldn't be required to participate. But even if that option exists, that kids can leave the room, most Americans are okay with it. And that should disturb a lot of people. Let me show you this image. This is what the Pew Research Center put out here. So 53% of Americans support allowing teacher-led prayer in public schools, but only if students are not required to participate. And let's just break down what this is saying. The blue, I'm going to remove myself, but I'm going to talk over it. On the far left of your screen, 8% of Americans, this is the far right, public school teachers should be allowed to lead their classes in prayer, and students should be required to participate. That's downright disturbing. That is Christian nationalism at its core. 8% of Americans want to shove religion down your kids' throats. But another 37% of Americans say, I want teachers leading kids in prayer as long as kids are not forced to participate. But that's not really an option, is it? Because if the teacher, an adult, is leading kids in prayer, then what are you going to do if you're a student? If you want to leave the classroom, your classmates might make fun of you. There is peer pressure to stay in class and do what everyone else is doing. It's very coercive. That's why, like the Freedom from Religion Foundation gets mad, rightly so, when a high school football coach is leading the team in prayer before a huddle. Because it's coercive, because you're part of a team. You don't want to walk away from your team before a big game. Same thing in the classroom. But again, 37% of Americans think it's fine to have a teacher lead prayer as long as kids don't have to say yes. Another 16% say, I don't want a teacher to lead a classroom in prayer, but I'm fine with it as long as kids get to leave. Which again, wrong answer. It's not okay, and you shouldn't be supportive of it, even with that option. And then this right here, this is the good people. This is the 37% of Americans say, no, what the hell are we doing? Teachers should not be allowed to lead classes in prayer at all. So yeah, that's the right answer, but only 37% of Americans feel that way. That means if you look at the numbers here, 61% of Americans believe government employees should be allowed to lead religious exercises in public school classrooms. And that sort of support makes it easier for Christian nationalists to enact their agenda, at least in places where promoting Christianity is part of your educational priority, like Texas, right? It's also a warning to all of us who support church state separation that we have a lot more work to do trying to explain to people why prayer in school is a bad idea, even if it's voluntary, because it's really not. And also, what type of prayers are these teachers going to do? You think it's going to be a generic prayer? No, it's going to be a Christian prayer. So, bad idea. Now, this survey also asked a bunch of other questions like, what about school prayer? Let's talk about some other things here. Sorry, let me jump down here. Which Americans support school-sponsored prayer? That's the next question. Who supports this stuff? It's exactly the people you would expect. Take a look at this. The dark blue on the far left of all of these charts, those are the people who want teachers to be forced, like they want teachers to lead class in prayer and students are required to do it. Those are the dark blue. And as you can see, who likes that idea? White evangelical Protestants, not a lot of them like that. But 80% of white evangelicals say, I'm cool with prayer in school as long as kids have the option to walk away, which they really don't. Black Protestants want teachers leading prayer and kids cannot walk away. That's disturbing. But at least overall, fewer of them want to see prayer in school. And there's all of you right there, the religiously unaffiliated. First of all, who are the 4% of religiously unaffiliated Americans who are like, I want prayer in school and I want my kid to be forced to say it. Also, I don't believe in God. Like, who are these people? I don't get that at all. Republicans want prayer in school more than anybody else. And I was surprised to see there's not a huge difference in the ages. I would have thought older Americans are much more okay with this. That is not the case. There's not much difference between older Americans and younger Americans. And there's not a ton of difference right over here with the region of the country. Yeah, the South wants prayer a little more, but not that much more than the West. So that's interesting as well. What about the political divide? Let me jump to that. I'm sorry, let me jump to one other thing. Let me show you this one right here. What about students leading prayer? What percentage of Americans say they support, favor, or oppose allowing public school students to voluntarily pray in student-led groups? Which is fine. Like, I don't know why this is a problem. This is totally legal. And honestly, I don't even know who's against students voluntarily praying in student groups. But white evangelicals, no surprise, they love student-led prayer. But I am disturbed by this. Among religiously unaffiliated people, 64% of us say, I'm fine with it, which is correct. 35% of religiously unaffiliated Americans say, I don't think it's okay for students to lead prayer voluntarily in student-led groups. That is the sort of shit that Christian nationalists think we're trying to do everywhere, and it's wrong. Legally speaking, students are allowed to lead prayers among other students. It's fine. It's legal. So I think I'm guessing this is people who don't like it, but the question isn't like, do you like it? It's should it be allowed? So that's messed up. There's one other thing I want to show you, I believe here. Here's the last image I want to show you. This is just everything overall. Look at the left one. What percentage of Americans want to allow public school coaches to lead their team in prayer? And this is not as differentiated as I want it to be. Most Americans think it's fine for like football coaches to lead their team in prayer. And yeah, white evangelicals really like it, but also more than a quarter of religiously unaffiliated people are okay with it. What the hell? No, not okay. And then what percentage of Americans want to see the 10 Commandments in public schools? 24% of religiously unaffiliated people think it's cool to have the 10 Commandments in classrooms. And like there's not much difference with region, a little difference with age, but also, I mean, people don't know what they're talking about, is the moral of this story, because there are some things that to me are so crystal clear that we should or should not allow. Teachers should not, and coaches at public schools should not be leading kids in prayer, even if it's voluntary, because it's coercive, because you are a role model, because it's not your job to be the example of how you pray. That's for parents and pastors to figure out, not teachers. So that should not be acceptable ever. If a student wants to lead fellow students in prayer in the lunchroom, at a club meeting, or who cares? That's legal and fine. I don't like it, but who cares what I think? It's legal. So we need to educate people about this stuff. And at a time when Trump and Republicans want to equate patriotism with Christianity, it is very important we get these questions right. I do wonder if the results would have been any different if the language in the survey had not asked, is prayer in school okay? But like, are Christian prayers in school okay? Because that is implied, but I don't know if everyone knows that. Because they're not going to be Islamic prayers. They would be Christian prayers to a monotheistic God. And I think the results we just saw kind of hint that when people know it's a Christian prayer, there is a difference of opinion, because 57% of Americans overall support coach-led prayers, but only 50% of Americans support the 10 Commandments in classrooms, which is specifically Christian. So I wonder if the way we phrase this makes a difference. And I think for all of us who talk about this stuff or care about this stuff, it is important to specify when we say we are talking about prayer in school, we are talking about Christian prayer in school, not a generic kind. When coaches are supposed to pray at midfield after football games, or lead the team in prayer before a huddle, or you pray at assemblies in school, it's important to recognize we are always talking about Christian prayers, usually conservative Christian prayers. And that might be a more effective way to get our message through. So, I mean, look, we don't need more religion anywhere, much less in public schools. But what's alarming to me is that only 37% of Americans oppose teacher-led prayer altogether. Students have always had the right to pray. That is not at stake. No one's trying to take that out of school. What's at stake is whether government employees should be allowed to lead religious exercises in school. A majority of Americans say yes. That is terrifying. It's exactly what Christian nationalists want to hear, because they're going to go further than that. And if they can use results like this to amplify their message, because most Americans are okay with prayer in school, Christian nationalists are going to use it to make sure it's their brand of prayer in school. They're relying on everyone's ignorance to do what they want. So I want you to know that. I want you to be on the lookout for it. I want you to speak out against it in any way you can. All right. Questions here before I move to the last story. Where did the survey come from? It came from the Pew Research Center, and I will make sure there is a link. I'm going to put it in the YouTube comments section for those of you who want to read more of this survey. You can read the methodology. You can read the questions. And I'll have it in the notes below when this goes up on YouTube. Has that number gone up or down? The overall prayer in school numbers, I assume, is what you're talking about. I was wondering that too. They did not provide answers to this in the past. And it makes me wonder, maybe they didn't ask this question in this way before. So we're working off of one data point, possibly. So I don't have an answer for you on that one. Who in their right minds could think prayer in schools is a good thing? The pledge was bad enough. It is bad enough, but guess what? If you ask Americans, do you like the Pledge of Allegiance? They're fine with it, because they don't understand all the problems with it and what it's actually symbolic of. We got to do a better job of educating people. All right, I got one last story for you here. Give me 1 second to pull this up. Okay. I don't actually have any notes for this one. I just wanted to talk to you about my favorite topic, which is Taylor Swift. She had her wedding last weekend, as you may have heard. And what do we know about Taylor Swift? I swear I'm going somewhere with this. What do we know about Taylor Swift's wedding? It was in Madison Square Garden. All the cool celebrities were invited. No one seems to know anything about what happened during the ceremony because I assume they all had to sign NDAs. And I'm also assuming it was filmed and it'll appear on like Disney Plus at some point in the future. I also heard that Adam Sandler was the officiant. But there was a very interesting post I saw on Reddit that just made a simple point, which is this may be one of the biggest weddings in American pop culture. And it's not weird that it's private in the sense that the public doesn't really have we don't have pictures of the wedding. We don't know what happened on the inside. But all signs point to the fact that this was not a religious wedding. And isn't that kind of amazing? Because, as far as I know, Taylor Swift is Christian, but it's not like the focus of her identity. I'm pretty sure Travis Kelce is also Christian, but also it's not a thing he necessarily talks about all the time, like one of his teammates necessarily. And yet, everything about this wedding was secular. Where did they hold it? Taylor Swift did not have her wedding at a church. I mean, I know even a megachurch may not have been able to hold all the people she wanted to hold, but it wasn't at a church. There wasn't a priest officiating the wedding. She got her celebrity friend to do it. As far as I can tell, or at least I haven't heard otherwise, they didn't have like any Bible readings or anything like that. It just wasn't a part of what they talked about. And so I just find that interesting. And I think it's part of a pattern because if you are not overtly religious, and because more and more Americans are becoming non religious, we are seeing a rise in non religious weddings. I want to show you this article from the Christian Post of all places. And they wrote an article a couple of years ago. It's the most recent one I could find. It's from 2022. But look at this headline. Americans increasingly ditching religious marriages for secular interfaith relationships. Again, you can see the the date line there. It's February 18, 2022. But some of the things they found in this American National Family Life Survey. And I'm not harping on this. I just want to point this out. Okay, it found that while 81% of couples who got married before 1972 wed someone of the same faith, only 52% of couples who got married in the last decade reported being in same faith marriages. Over the same period, secular marriages also grew from 3 to 16%. And I think this is a really fascinating topic because for a lot of Americans, especially for like devoutly evangelical ones, deeply, I mean, it's impossible to be like kind of Mormon, you know what I mean? But if you're Mormon, of course you're marrying another Mormon. But for a larger segment of America, religion isn't necessarily the thing that defines you. So if you're going on a date, you might not care what someone's religious background is. I mean, what's more important to you? Let's say you're single. Let's say you want to date someone. You're looking on some app. You're online somewhere. What's more important to you? Who that person votes for, or what their religious label is? At least anecdotally, I think more people care about your values and who you vote for. And politics matters way more than your religion. I feel like I have seen more comments online on social media with people saying, I am single and I'm looking to meet somebody, but no MAGA types, compared to I'm single and I want to date someone, but I'm saying no if you're Presbyterian. They don't care. You might be Christian, but you might be a progressive Christian, and that's fine. Who cares? I've just seen a lot more stuff like that. The Christian Post article also added, just 46% of Americans who are married today report that they were married by a religious leader in a church or other religious setting. Some 16% said they were married by a religious leader in a secular setting. while another 36% said their wedding was entirely secular. And I think I've heard this from a lot of friends of mine as well. Last paragraph here. Only 30% of Americans who were married within the past decade had their ceremony at a church or a house of worship and officiated by a religious leader. I know a lot of people who might have gotten married in a church because they could rent it out, but they had a friend get ordained from like the Universal Life Church online so that their friend could do the ceremony. That happens a lot. And it happens more and more, especially as we have more intermingling of different kinds in communities. If you live in a big city, there's a good chance you might be in an interracial relationship. There's a good chance you're going to meet people who are not in the same community that you grew up with, right? And the same is true for religion. I feel like I've read this before, but you're much more likely to get married to someone of your same social class than you are someone who's the same skin color or religion than you. And I only point this out to say, like, that's a fascinating trend. And I wish there was more polling on it. I'm really curious what the trends are like today. I wonder if more people are having less religious weddings because I don't know, if I want to create a wedding, I want a ceremony that's meaningful for me. And going to a church that I don't belong to, like if I'm not really Catholic, I don't want to go through the Catholic process of getting married. I'm not going to like promise you my firstborn child will be baptized in this church or bullshit like that. And if Catholicism doesn't mean much to you, why would you want to get married in a Catholic church other than to appease your parents or the in-laws or whatever? And if you're not highly religious, you just want to get married in a nice setting at a banquet hall somewhere, maybe, and your friends doing the officiating. And what are the readings going to be at the wedding? Do you want Bible verses that mean nothing to you? Or do you want poetry that speaks to you? Or a passage from a novel you read that really highlights what your relationship is like? I would think as more people get used to that and it's not weird, and if you've ever been to a wedding like that, I think you come away with it thinking, that was really cool. I learned something about that couple that I didn't know. I've been to plenty of religious weddings and I've been to so many Indian weddings that are ritual after ritual after ritual. And I walked away thinking, I know my like cousin is the one getting married, but like the person they're marrying, I still don't know a damn thing about them because the nature of the ceremony was so heavy on religion and it wasn't personal. And I think more people are having these personal weddings. So, moral of the story, Taylor Swift had maybe the biggest wedding that we have ever seen, or at least will see when you subscribe to Disney Plus in the future, I assume. And nothing about it sounds like it was religious. It sounds like it was a celebrity fest. I know people can trash it for all the reasons people trash everything. I don't even care about that. But to have a friend or a celebrity be the officiant, to not have any overtly religious aspects of it, to hold it in a basketball arena as opposed to a big church somewhere, I think that says a lot about our culture. And I think that's fascinating. And I wonder if that'll have an effect of normalizing having a wedding ceremony that just brings together the things you like instead of the things society pressures you to like a wedding in a church. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. What other questions or concerns about that? Otherwise, I just wanted to get that off my chest. When someone votes, who someone votes for tells you a lot about that person's values. Very true. And just to make the point I was trying to make earlier, if someone tells me they're like a Bernie Sanders voter or a Donald Trump voter, I know way more about who they are as a person than if they said, I'm a Christian. Because then you got to ask all the follow-up questions, right? So if I care about my values, I want to know who you vote for. I want to know what issues matter to you more than I care what religious label you use, because you might be Muslim, but you're like a socially progressive Muslim who's doing it because your family's religious. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. I want to know what person you are on the inside. Well, maybe both of them recognize how an overtly Christian wedding could hurt their brands. That could be true. And if that is the case, that if they had a super religious wedding, maybe it turns off their mass appeal. If that's true, I wish there was some hint that that's what they were trying. That's the strategy behind it. I just haven't seen anything suggesting they thought about a religious wedding and decided against it. I haven't seen that yet. Cool. I think we're done. Thanks for sticking around tonight, everybody. Thank you, Jess, for the awesome moderating and for keeping everything on track. Remember, you can go to patreon.com/Hemon if you want to support my channel, everything I do, and you could read the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. I have a story going up tomorrow that is not one I discussed tonight. So you can subscribe for free if you want to. I think that's it. Next Thursday, I should be back at a normal time, or at least I'll be back Thursday night, and I will see you then. Thank you so much, and have a good, safe weekend, everybody.